Unpopular opinion. My friends, most of us don't have insomnia. We have, I have too much on my mind, yeah. We have, I just want some time to myself, yeah. For so many of us, sleep is a precious resource, but we don't treat it that way. We have lots of reasons why this is true, and I'm hoping that today we can try and work through some of those so that we can get the sleep that we need. If you're new here, this is week 4 of the Recharge Challenge. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello, and on this podcast, we talk about our lives as physicians and how we can make our lives better. We are right in the middle of our 10-week challenge, trying to drop in little habits to help reduce stress and improve the way that we're living. We know that we are up against a big challenge when it comes to burnout in healthcare systems. We know that our workplaces are often quite toxic to our health. We are not going to solve that problem, but right now in this challenge, we are trying to introduce small ideas to help get us to be living better, reduce stress, so that we can be living more of our lives. That is what we want. So, this week, we are talking about sleep. Now, you don't have to be a sleep specialist to know how important sleep is to all of our parts, right? It doesn't matter what part of the body you are a specialist in. We know the impact that poor sleep has on all of it, right? Whether we are talking about healing from injury, whether we are talking about metabolic health, whether we're talking about heart attacks, we are talking about the importance of sleep and how it is important that more of us get more sleep. In this challenge, we've been talking a lot about telomeres and how telomere length is a reasonable predictor for, what is the impact of stress on our body, our literal, sort of stress signals on our DNA. People who do not sleep enough have shorter telomeres than people who sleep more, and more being 7 hours or more. It doesn't take that much to do better. And we're going to talk today about some of the things that are getting in our way so that we can hopefully start to remove some of those barriers, because we are not talking about needing to sleep 10 hours. We're talking about needing to sleep 7 hours, which I feel is a very achievable goal. Now, before I lose you, I can see you sitting there telling me, yeah, but I work overnights. Yeah, but I'm on call. Yeah, but I just had a baby. Some of those things, right? There are seasons to it, right? If you have just had a baby, if you are caring for someone who is sick or you've been sick, right? There might be periods of time where our sleep is more challenged. I remember very clearly when this was years ago, but I got my first Fitbit that tracked sleep, and I remember putting it on. At the time, I had an infant at home, and I was getting up and running into the hospital to go deliver babies. And I remember looking at the report from my sleep in my Fitbit app and it telling me what a poor job I was doing. And I was like, yep, I knew that. I don't need this app. And I immediately turned off the sleep feature and have barely looked at it since, to be quite honest, because I did not need that information. And of course, if you are, familiar with that kind of a situation where you're so tired, it doesn't help you when this device is telling you that you haven't slept. You know it. So there are seasons, right, where we may not sleep well. And even there, I would still say that some of these things that we're going to talk about here today still apply, right? But if you are listening and you just had a baby, my love goes out to you. Um, been there, done that, and I know what that sleep deprivation is like. If you are in your residency training, right, and you're in acute phases where you have very little control over your work schedule, that is a season and it will pass. We have all of us gone through that season. And, if we are out on the other side, if we are in our attending role and we are still working in a job that directly challenges our sleep, I hope that the conversation helps you to decide what you are going to do. I do absolutely know that there are some roles that physicians carry where sleep is considered, the last thing on anyone's mind, of course, except for you, right? This is people who work 24 or more hour shifts, who are constantly on nights, who are constantly on call for their patients after, spending 18 hours in the operating room, right? There are many roles that are like that, and we cannot count on our hospital systems and our employers to make that better. Sometimes we will have to make different decisions so that we are able to prioritize sleep. I do not trust the health systems to come up with the right answer there. But sometimes that takes some tough questions that we have to answer about who am I? What do I need? What does my body need? And how am I going to make sure that I get it? Because we cannot trust those health systems to have our best interest in mind, even though, right? Do you want surgery from someone who has been up for 37 hours? No, you do not, right? We all know that. We can all look at the reasons why we don't want that situation to go on. We all know that it goes on. All right. I'm going to pull myself back from that tangent because that's not very helpful. But if you are living in that life and you are constantly blocked from being able to get adequate sleep because of your work schedule and or your call schedule, it is time to really think, is this okay with me? Is it okay for me to continue to be denied things that are literally going to affect my health? All right, tangent over. So there can be seasons. There can definitely be roles that we might have that are really severely impacting our ability to get sleep. But I would argue that for so many of us, that isn't really the problem, right? We've got other things that are causing problems. Now, sometimes those are going to be health conditions. Looking at you, perimenopause and hormones or pregnancy or anything like that. And if you've got a health issue going on that is impacting your sleep, step one is to go and get professional help for that. Now, sometimes, of course, yes, that's going to be hormones, right? Sometimes that might be a legitimate insomnia or some other form of sleep disorder that you need to be evaluated. Sometimes, of course, it's going to be a mood disorder, right, that is affecting your sleep. You deserve to get professional help if that is part of the problem. I know so many physicians who skip their own healthcare and so many people who just put it off and they just have convinced themselves, well, I should be able to manage this. I should just be able to do this. If one of those things is occurring, this is your call. This is a physician telling you you need to go and please get the professional help that you deserve. It is important for you. It is important for everyone around you because, of course, when we do not sleep well, that has tremendous ripple effects. We need you. You need you. Go and get the professional help. Assuming that that is not the problem for you, assuming that we are not struggling with one of those particular things, or maybe that's not the only problem, let's think about what else gets in our way. All right. Sometimes it's other people. Sometimes the people in our lives, that might be partners, it might be friends who call you at all hours, it might be kids who crawl in your bed, right? Other people are affecting your ability to get sleep. This is a hard one, and people are going to make different choices. But if you are constantly dragging, you are not getting adequate sleep, you are miserable and exhausted, it is not okay for you to continue in that state. We might have, again, seasons where this is true, but if you are constantly sacrificing your own sleep for someone else and then trying to go to work and do the highly important work that you do, it is not okay. And so sometimes fixing our sleep problem includes looping in these other people. And, depending on who those other people are, there's going to be different challenges there. But it is so important. We can't just say, well, there's no way that I can get more sleep because, I have to stay up and spend time with my partner because my kids crawl into bed. There are solutions. They may not be solutions that you're excited about, but your sleep is important to your health. Your sleep is important to your professional abilities, right? We will not be in a good mood. We will not make good decisions. We will not be our best self when we are not sleeping, right? If we think about 7 hours as trying to get to that bar, right? How will we get there? And what boundaries do we need to set with some of the other people in our lives? It doesn't have to be perfect, but if this is part of the challenge, then trying to make some progress in that is going to be really important. What else gets in our way? So, hormones and medical problems, right, can be one. Other people can be a problem. What about our brains, right? Our brains are so busy all day long. We probably spend all day just thinking, thinking, thinking. There are different estimates of how many thoughts we have a day. 40 to 60,000 is kind of on the higher end of what I've heard. I don't know. I don't count mine, and you don't count yours either. But we have lots and lots of thoughts, and some of them are conscious thoughts, and some of them are subconscious thoughts, but a constant dialogue that is running through our heads. And if you're like most physicians, that dialogue is a real jumble of patient care, trying to figure out what you're going to eat for dinner, trying to figure out when you can get a break. If you've got a family, you're probably coordinating a lot of things for them, right? Thinking about the state of the world, and on and on and on, trying to keep up with books and news and all of these important things, right? There's a constant stream of thoughts running through your brain. And we might tell ourselves, well, yeah, but then I'm just going to go to sleep, right? If our mind is constantly that busy and you think that you'll just lay down and pass out, if that's going well, great. For most people, that doesn't work. There was a great analogy that came up in The Telomere Effect, which is the book that we are sort of working from, where they talked about our thoughts are not like a light switch that we just turn off. All right. Our minds don't work that way. It works more like a plane that needs to come in for landing, right? We need to gradually wind our mind down so that we are going to be in a place where we're ready to fall asleep. Now, if you've been following along with the challenge, if you've been practicing some yoga nidra, that is helping, right? Because there is so much stillness and calm in those words, even if you're not doing that right before bed, right? Because the intention of that practice is not to put us to sleep, it's to allow us to have a period of time where we are deeply resting, where we are deeply relaxing and calm with a quiet mind, right? That is excellent practice for being able to wind yourself down to go to bed. You can do that before bed if you'd like to do it. There are no rules there. But we want to figure out, how can I start to wind my mind down so that I can sleep better? Another thing that we've been working on, the other challenge from last week, is our breath. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about with the challenge, you'll want to go back to episode 200 from October 28th. That is the kickoff of the 10-week recharge challenge. You can join us at any time. You can do it just by listening to these podcasts. You could just pick this one and just go with this and say, I'm just going to work on my sleep. There's no right or wrong. We are just trying to help our sleep better. Now, I'm going to break myself in here. If you're a woman physician and you want to put a little bit more skin in the game, join us in the VIP Recharge Challenge. It is $49. It starts from the beginning and goes all the way through. It is your guided, curated resources, reminding you along the way, hey, we're working on this together. It is very simple. It is very straightforward. It is designed to help you implement these practices so that you can have less stress, more life. Okay? That is what we want. Now, so that is another obstacle, right? Is winding down our brain. Are there other things that you need to be doing in order to wind down your brain? I'm going to talk about a few specific therapies as we get to the end, but what are you doing before bed? Are you scrolling and watching a bunch of things? Are you reading the news? Are you watching murder shows? Like, what are you doing? And is that helping you with your sleep? Again, If your sleep is great and there's no problem, there's no problem. But for a lot of us, we need to do a better job of winding down our brains so that we can go to sleep. If you are up on Epic, finishing patient charts and seeing your inbox blow up at the weird times of day that it blows up, that is not going to help you sleep. You need to be able to wind yourself down. I know that's a bigger conversation. That is something that so many of us have to work on. But I want us to be very mindful that this habit that we've fallen into, so many of us, of working on our inbox late in the evening is specifically not helping us sleep. We can take even the blue light component out of it. Our mind is engaged and activated. It is solving problems. It is probably having some feelings about, God, I'm so frustrated. I'm so tired of being asked the same question. It might be having, oh, why didn't somebody help me with this message? Why is this just coming in now? There are so many aspects to it that is harming us. We need to do a better job. Now, I say that with total love. I say that with total understanding of the very many challenges that we face as physicians. This is something that we all work on. And this is part of boundaries work, but this is boundaries with ourselves. Again, as we know, we often work in toxic healthcare systems. We work in systems that, thrive on us donating our time over and over again and being the bottom line when it comes to getting work done. This is not okay. It is how our healthcare system is set up, and it will not get better if there is no pressure on the system to do better. This is not easy. There is moral injury here, right? Because we do not want our patients to suffer. And yet, if we do not set some boundaries, if we do not, decide, I'm going to try and do the best I can, but I am not available all of the time. I cannot continue to work right before bed because I can't sleep. And then the next day is terrible, right? We need to work on this part. So, long story to say, we need to help our brain wind down. That means we need to be off Epic. We need to be off our phone. We need to be off of things that are exciting or arousing in some way. I don't mean sexually arousing, but that activates our mind and has us, thinking a lot of thoughts and spinning on something, right? Don't open the paper right before you're going to go to bed if that's going to make you upset, right? Instead, we need to cultivate activities or practices that help our brains to wind down. Now, what else might be getting in the way? Our habits, our behaviors. So again, this might, sort of feed into the same issues, right? Our behaviors around being in our inbox, checking our email, checking other things that are going to be upsetting or stimulating in some way, right? That's not going to help us. But what else, right? If you are eating really late at night, that is often not helpful for your sleep. If you are scrolling social media, even if you've got your blue light blocker, that is often not very helpful for sleep, right? Are you staying up very late and not putting yourself to bed? Revenge procrastination, my friends, is a very real thing. You've spent all day taking care of other people. You probably come home, you do whatever you need to do at home, and you just want a little time for yourself. This is a very common practice that people fall into, a habit rather. I should call it a habit, not a practice, right? Where we're just like, well, I just need some time for me. But meanwhile, we aren't going to bed until very, very late and we are exhausted. And the next day and the next day and the next day, right? It all continues to spiral. That behavior is not helping us. You might need some help to untangle some of that, but we have to see our part in it, not in a self blaming way, but in a way of, okay, what am I doing or not doing that is causing some issues for me getting the sleep that I need, right? Again, I don't think this is a very high bar to try and get 7 hours of sleep, but most of us are not there. And we need to do a better job because it is literally important to ourselves, to our DNA, to our long term health. All right. So, in the big picture, right, we may need professional help. We might need to rethink our roles if we are in a job that really has a directly negative impact on our sleep and our ability to get adequate sleep. Um, we need to appreciate when we're in a season that we expect to pass and still decide that we're going to do the best that we can, right? Those are kind of the macro things. But let's think about what we can do right now to try and help ourselves. So, if you're in the challenge this week, we are just trying to figure out how can I do a better job sleeping. If you have not started doing the yoga nidra, go ahead and start doing the yoga nidra and do it right before bed. That is a perfect wind down activity. Again, the purpose of yoga nidra is not to help you fall asleep, although I guarantee you that if you are in bed, you're nice and cozy, right? You've washed your face and done whatever you needed to do, and you put on this very relaxing, slow meditation, you are likely to pass out. And that might be the good enough thing that you were doing for yourself this week. And then you get to check off 2 boxes. I did yoga nidra and I improved my sleep, right? We're going to count that. So don't be afraid to keep it easy. What else? If there are behaviors that are getting in your way, eating too late, drinking too much alcohol, scrolling, not exercising, just I don't have to tell you what we're doing. We're doing things that are not helping us, right? Take a look at those behaviors this week and think about one little thing that you want to change, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but what will you do and see how it can help you, right? If you are going to bed very, very late, can you move it forward 15 minutes? If you are always having that second glass of wine and you know that that impacts your sleep, can you try just the one, right? If you are eating very late at night, do you need to do that or can you figure something else out so that you won't be having heartburn and you can lay down, right? What are those behaviors and how can you make it better? If you need a little bit more help, maybe you don't need full on professional help, but you know that the way that you're approaching sleep is not helpful. Mindfulness based therapy for insomnia and based therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, rather, for insomnia are 2 programs that you can initiate and you can do them online. These are programs, they can be live and in person, they can be online, right? They can be asynchronous. Like there's a lot of different ways that those can look. But these are all trying to focus on having better sort of thought patterns about sleep and rest that help us. If we are constantly having the thought, I'm not a good sleeper, I never get enough sleep, I better be able to sleep tonight because tomorrow is really important. And we're constantly having all these negative, sort of toxic thoughts running around, that generally does not produce good sleep. And it's not always as simple as, just, deciding to change, right? We might need a little help and support to do it. So MBTI and CBTI can be very helpful for that. And even something as simple as working on the thought of, I'm not a good sleeper, can be helpful and can help you get you to your goal. So I hope that there's something there that you have found like, yep, I'm going to work on that. If you need to think about that big picture stuff, right? If you need to think, I need to figure out how am I going to get the adequate sleep that I need, knowing that my job is this way, or I need to have a discussion with the people in my life and figure out how am I going to sleep better. You might need to set, if you haven't already, a do not disturb on your phone, right? There are many things that we can do. Some of them are going to be uncomfortable. Some of them are going to, require a little bit of boundaries with ourselves or with other people. We can do hard things and we can do these things in order to get the rest that we need. So set an intention, make a plan. If you know that things are pretty hard right now, you might keep it very simple. If you, are feeling like, oh, I'm really enjoying participating in the challenge, I'm really getting a lot out of this, I really, am feeling better rested already with the yoga nidra and the taking the breath, figure out what can you do this week, right? How can you make it even better? We are trying to dribble in little healthy habits and make things better and better and better as we go along. That is the whole purpose here. Um, so if you've got more spaciousness and you're like, yeah, no, this is really something I'm going to be ready to tackle, then, jump on in, right? Do it. Set an intention, right? This is your invitation. I want us to figure out, how do we set healthy boundaries with ourselves? how do we work on our habits, right? How do we start to identify as somebody who takes care of themselves and is really good at self care, someone who decides that their health and well being is important and they're willing to figure out how do I make it better for myself? That is how we are going to do this. The healthcare system is such a hot mess, and many of us are choosing to still be in it, and we need to figure out how will we take care of ourselves in order to show up and take care of patients, in order to lead the charge to change the system. The system is not going to do it for us, my friends. We will have to figure out how to do it. We can't do it if we're sleep deprived. I will leave it at that. I hope you are enjoying the challenge. If so, please send me a message at megan@healthierforgood.com. I'd love to hear from you. Join us in the VIP Recharge Challenge. It is very simple. It is, simply a program that is designed to help you make these challenges stick. I hope you'll join us. You can find the link in the show notes. And tune in next week for next week's challenge. Can't wait to see you. Have a good rest of your week.